Today I want to talk about DMARC, and because I'm going to be talking about DMARC, we're going to have to talk about SPF and DKIM, but I want to try to make this simple. I'm not going to get super detailed. If you want standards for that, you can go other places that will actually give you all the standards and all the things you want. But this is actually meant to be a video that is a little bit shorter and that is only kind of explanatory, so hopefully you'll join me for the next few minutes. First, let's start with why DMARC and what is DMARC. So CIS, Center for Internet Security, Critical Controls, Control 9, Safeguard 9.5, says to lower the chance of spoofed or modified emails from valid domains, implement DMARC policy and verification, starting with implementing SPF or Sender Policy Framework and the domain keys identified mail standards or DKIM standards. And that's what it's asking us to do here. But what does that really mean for people that are maybe not as technical and want to understand this? Let's talk about what that is. So an SPF unpacked is a record type in DNS. It's text, right? Record type. It starts with V equals SPF1. That just says, hey, I'm an SPF record. That's it. It then says IP4 or IP6 or host names or all kinds of other things. Like I said, I'm not making this super detailed. IP4 8.6.7.53.09, so 8675. Anyways, Jenny's mail server, right? It also says, please include stuff from protection.outlook.com or spf.protection.outlook.com, all of Microsoft's mail servers. Be careful, though, because an SPF record can have recursive lookup challenges where you run out of numbers. Sometimes you can look for DNS of SPF that includes SPF.1, that includes SPF.2 inside it, right? So you can have problems there. But basically, it includes Microsoft and Jenny's mail server. And this last line says -all means nobody else allowed. Now, there's the tilde all, or not tilde, the little squiggly all, whatever it is. Make fun of me in the comments. All. Basically says nobody else that's not on this list is allowed. Hard stop, hard reject. Well, let's look at what that looks like in practice, right? So Jenny's real server, 8.67.53.09, which I know .09 is not possible. It'd just be .9, but fine. So we're sending this message from Jenny at jenny.com to friend at friend.com, and it's going to just be accepted. And the reason for that is if you are not doing spam filter settings on the receiving side, yeah, SPF has to be set on the sender side, and the spam filter receiver has to be set on the receiving side. Without spam filter settings to block any SPF failures, it's not going to fail, even if it is wrong. So just because a sender set this doesn't mean that the receiver has to honor it, and that hasn't necessarily been set on that side. So when you're thinking about implementing this, both sides have to be implemented. So if the receiver is not there, not set, it's not going to work. Okay, or it's not going to stop the mail. Let's see what it should do if this is sent from a good domain. It should be from Jenny's real mail server yet again. It should be the same message yet again. But now we have this synchronization between the mail server that's receiving and DNS to say, hey, do you have any text records that start with V equals SPF1? Dope. What are they? Oh, goodness. These are the mail servers that are allowed to send mail on behalf of this domain for Jenny, right? These are published in DNS, which means now we can have our spam filter stop and say, listen, are you on the checklist of these IPs? 8.67.53.09 is on that checklist, it would appear. So we're fine there. Okay, cool. Then the mail's accepted. That's the proper flow. That actually has been checked through SPF to make sure that it matches. The -all is there, so it should fail if anything else isn't there. And so we're good. It could also come from Outlook, and it'd be fine as well. So either of these work just fine. What happens if somebody's a baddie and somebody's sending mail as a spoofer? Someone's saying, bad guy's spoofing mail. 8.67.68.69 is the IP he's coming from, instead of coming from Jenny's mail server. They send the mail, though, as if it was from Jenny at jenny.com to friend at friend.com, right? They're trying to spoof it. They're trying to do bad things, and we know where this leads. All right, well, what should happen? Again, synchronous communication with DNS. Those are based on the TTL, how long they're there. You're going to say, same spam filter guy is going to look at it and go, wait a minute. I don't think you came from the 8.67.53.09. I don't think you came from Microsoft. I think that you are a bad guy, and we're going to go ahead and block that, and we're going to reject that sender and terminate the transaction. We're not going to receive mail from them. My friend at friend.com won't be a victim. So we've talked about SPF. Let's talk about what is DKIM, because this adds to this and builds up to what we're trying to get to. So let's take a look. So now we have our mail server, and we have this special stamp. It's going to be in our version like a wax seal, if you think about that on an envelope of olden days. But it's the DKIM stamp. And this is Jenny's secret key stamp, as we're going to get into it, which is a form of a private key. So she's going to stamp her email, and it's going to be sent off, and there's going to be a DNS record, jenny._domainkey.jenny.com. It's Jenny's key, right? V equals DKIM1, K equals RSA for the type of hash, or for the type of encryption that's being used. And then it gives you its public key is what's being given, right? So we have a DNS public key, right? That public key correlates to the private key that Jenny has in her hand, right? And that gives you that ability that she can sign that message or stamp it, if you will, with that private key and use that to then have that be checked on the other end. What's being stamped? Let's talk about this, at least in the pieces that are part of this. The from, jenny@jenny.com. The to, friend@friend.com. Subject, why the wall? Date 2025-9/9. Body hash is the fingerprint kind of the body of the message, the actual Matt typed this stuff message. It's kind of a fingerprint that if I change 2 letters, 1 letter, a period, a space, a comma, a next inner, it changes the hash. And that means that hash changes, means the overall signature has changed and therefore it could fail. And then also a message ID, right? So these are the components that are protected or part of the DKIM standard. And so let's take a look at this in action. So Jenny signs her message, right? The receiving side accepts it. Okay, I'm going to repeat this. Without a spam filter setting set to actually check DKIM and care if someone has P equals reject and reject it if it needs to be rejected, you don't get any protections from this as a receiver, right? So we need to make sure that we are setting it to actual honor those things and set to reject whenever that is. What would that look like? Now we actually have that same message delivered. We have the query of that DNS key so that we can get that public key to check it against the public key that has been signed with this private key as a selector, right? In this case, Jenny signs this message. Some fancy math happens ultimately, and that fancy math says, hey, these things check out. That was probably signed by that private key. We're good. Right? And so the signature matches. Now it's accepted. So this is just a slight change from before in the sense that the sender still put it out there, but the receiver didn't do anything with it. Now the receiver is doing stuff with it. They're actually honoring this type of signature check. What does it look like if bad guy's spoofing, right? We've got Mr. Bad Guy spoofing with a fake stamp, and they're going to try to sign or change some component of it. That DKIM is going to be checked from Jenny@Jenny, but it's actually coming from member 8.67.68.69, which means it's failing SPF. It's also going to be potentially, as we check right now with checking and querying that key, checking against the signature against its private key versus public key validation, and it's not matching. It's a signature mismatch, in which case something's been modified or a spoofer has sent that or someone that doesn't have the private key, something has changed. And now it's failing DKIM as well as SPF. Awesome. That should be rejected, and the sender's rejected. All right, then what is DMARC? I've built up SPF. I've built up what is DKIM. What is DMARC? DMARC essentially tries to ask 2 questions. We just talked about them. Does SPF pass? And does the DKIM signature match? That's what it's asking. There's a couple of other entries in there that we'll see, but let's unpack this. So we see on the bottom P equals reject, but there's 3 possible policies. P equals none, that just says, bro, I'm just watching and taking notes. One might enter into that in the early phases of moving towards P equals reject to gather what's been sent on their behalf. We'll get into that. P equals quarantine says, it probably doesn't match. Let's go ahead and quarantine this if it doesn't match DKIM or if it doesn't match SPF. But then we get to the safest one that you should be moving towards in your journey, which is P equals reject. And Jenny's smart. She has P equals reject set, saying, no, if you receive something and it doesn't come from my servers, it's not signed by my stamp, then just reject it. And that's what we're saying. But also not only just reject it, we're going to get into this in a second, send me back some mail reports. If you notice in that query, it says RUA equals mail to reports at Jenny, and RUF equals mail to forensics at Jenny. Well, the RUA is aggregate reports, high-level detail, just 35 messages received, 34 passed, 1 rejected, nothing in that nature, just the raw data. Whereas RUFs are the aggregated data, RUFs are the raw data of a single instance, detailed forensics with redacted copies of emails that failed DMARC, meaning that I now have it sent every time one failed, that someone spoofed me, or perhaps my pesky marketing department didn't tell me they were starting to use another tool. So you're getting these reports back as part of this standard, and you get to set where those email addresses go. Let's look at how this plays out. All right, all the world's email servers start sending when they receive mail to someone as a recipient that's purportedly from you. It now says, hey, I'm going to send this RUF message to Jenny and let her know that there's a forensics of a message that was bad. If Jenny's not monitoring that mailbox, if nobody's sitting there at RUF or RUA at jenny.com, or I guess that should have been forensics at jenny.com, then nothing's going to happen. And we go back to my same security guard. If you're not examining failures, you will struggle with P equals reject and strict DMARC adherence. You will not be successful in delivering your messages. You have to validate that the things coming back are showing that mail's being blocked or received and all of those things, right? So it does matter. let's close this up with just some takeaways. Number one, sending. SPF set to -all. You need to be very, very good about managing your own SPF record. But also, as the recipient of mail from others, you need to make sure your spam filter is set to honor -all and reject on failure. Don't say, well, I don't want to miss any messages. Business be real important for me. And if I miss any messages, we're going to have problems. Don't be that human. Genuinely. Sending. DKIM should be set on all sending sources. That means you might have to go make several DNS records. You might have to use the same. There may be services that you can't use your own key. They have a key that they're going to give you that you need to put in DNS that you'll be managing. Those are all things that need to be done for each and every single sending service that you manage, and you will need to make sure that you are signing with those keys so that things can be validated. Also, when receiving messages signed with DKIM, your spam filter needs to have inbound set to reject failing signature messages, and at the very least, honor the next piece, which is DMARC. Sending in DMARC, set to P equals reject. Your goal is to get to P equals reject. That is one pushback I'll say against CIS and the critical controls. They assume that you know that. They just say, implement DMARC and DKIM. They don't say, get to a point that it's safe and matters to you. We saw it doesn't help in the other cases if it's not. And then the last piece is when receiving in DMARC, your spam filter should be set inbound to set to honor DMARC policies from senders. These are the clear pieces that I would say you need to take away from this conversation. One last piece, reporting. Always, always, always analyze reports. Make adjustments. If legitimate senders from your org are missing, validate delivery reports for deliverability studies. Like, you should literally say, if they start up a new service, I want to see the rejections, I want to find out and query about it, and if it is legitimate, let's get this thing to production so that people aren't missing messages, and let's fix our process so that it actually comes through and gets properly set up from us, rather than just being used as a mail sending thing that makes us loosen our standards. And the last piece is actively do stuff with this data. If you see senders, if you see things that are not supposed to be there, yeah, there might not be much you can do about the fact that there was rejected senders, but you can feel solace that your reporting is functional and you are seeing that senders are being rejected that aren't matching DKIM and DMARC, and that your messages that are being sent are being honored by those recipient servers and is improving deliverability around the world. I just want to say thank you to EasyDMARC for sponsoring this video. To make it simpler and easier to understand is always my goal, and to have someone that wants to partner with Matt Lee to do that is awesome. So if you are going to choose a platform, I would advocate talking to EasyDMARC.